Well, well, well. Look who's finally getting her act together. It's me. I'm the one who's getting her act together, not you. I'm sure you're fine. Okay, so let's mention the elephant in the room. I am filming my January wrap up real late. The only reason I can give to explain why this is coming so late to your subscription box is it's a mixture of having a child, having migraines. Well, here it is. I'm going to tell you exactly what I thought of all of the books that I read for my Bookish Blossoms game. I'm going to tell you about some other books I read, and I need to clarify something right off the bat. I read so many books in January. A lot of them were picture books that I read with my child, but picture books are still books. So I read 29 books in January. Obviously, I cannot sit here and talk to you about every single book in depth for 29 books. This would be like an hour-long video. I don't want to make an hour-long video. You probably don't want to watch an hour-long video. So for a lot of the books that I just honestly don't have a lot to say about, I'm going to put an image in the video. I'm going to show you the book that I read. I'm going to show you the cover of the book. And then I'm also going to give you my star rating based off of a 1 to 5 rating system, the Goodreads system, if you will. Let's start with the book that I disliked the most. And then as we get through the video, we'll end on the best. The book that made my heart pitter patter like a spring day. Man, I'm so tired. To begin, I didn't read any 1-star books in January, thank God. I didn't DNF anything out of a sense of exasperation or contempt. But I did read a book that was not what I would have wanted to read if I had a choice in the matter. And if you were here for my January TBR game, you know exactly what's coming in at the 2-star slot. It's this bad boy. Let me tell you guys about Dune. Let's start with the things I liked about this book, because I did not give this book a 1-star review. I didn't DNF it. So obviously there was something about this book that made it worth me finishing it, besides the fact that my partner made me read this book. So what I will say about Mr. Frank Herbert is that the man can write a sentence. The prose of this book is technically, grammatically well written. There were phrases in this book that I had to highlight, and I would go, "Oh, that was nice. That was a beautiful turn of phrase. That was actually really, really well crafted." And I'm impressed that a writer sat down and created that turn of phrase or that sentence. Good job, Mr. Herbert. Whenever you talk about a beloved book on the internet, people are going to get upset. And so I just want to say, before I dive into like what I disliked about this book, I really want you to hear me when I say that if this is your favorite book, that's great. I am not mad at you. I'm not mad at this book. Before I kind of really get into why I disliked this book so particularly, I really want you to hear that if this is your favorite book, you're not a bad person. You're fine. We all have favorite books, and sometimes it says really deep things about us and sometimes it doesn't. Reading is so personal, and honestly, sometimes I feel uncomfortable rating a book because I know that the feelings that I had about a particular book are so subjective and personal and particular that it feels icky, or it just makes me feel uncomfy to put like a star rating on a book as if it's an objective statement of fact rather than just my subjective opinion, right? So I'm giving this 2 stars. That's my opinion, but I need you to hear that like this book is a 5-star read to a lot of people. Okay, so the things I didn't like about this book, there was no, and I mean none, suspense. Frank Herbert doesn't know what suspense is. For example, there is a character that betrays the family that is the center point of this book, right? We find out who that character is way before they do the betrayal. We find out who the character is through these kind of meta additions that happen at the beginning of every chapter by the princess of the Galactic Empire. She's a historian writing about the main character's life. She's written tons of different historical treatises and books about him. She just says, yeah, like this person betrayed the family. Then literally right after that, the person in question who betrays the family internally in her monologue says, yes, I'm going to betray the family. For the first couple chapters, there is some tension of like, who can we trust? Who is going to be there when we need them the most? And then it's just like, the book is just like, none of that. That's not fun. I'm just going to tell you. I'm not going to show. I'm going to tell. If any book is a classic example of the rule show don't tell, it's this book, guys. All it does is tell you things. It does not show you things. It just tells you things. So this book has no suspense. It's a bummer. It's a bummer because you're going through the book and this book covers a lot, but it also doesn't at the same time. It's so hard to explain. What is this book? Our main character's name is Paul, guys. His name is Paul. His mom's name is Jessica, right? But then we also have words in this book that are just casually thrown out. Everyone just says them like they're normal words, like Arrakis and Muad'Dib and Atreides. And there's so many others. It was so striking. In the very first couple pages of this book, I kept highlighting words that were odd, that I had never, that Frank Herbert just made up, that he just created for the world of Arrakis. I couldn't believe that our main character's name was Paul. So bad. That was very jarring throughout the book. I would just read paragraphs after paragraphs of these vaguely Arabic sounding words, and I would just be like, okay, that's fine. That's what it's called. Sure, right? And then Paul said, and I'm like, God, what is this? What is this book? I've mentioned in passing so far in my videos that I am queer. I'm bisexual, just to clarify. And, didn't like the queer representation in this book at all. Was really predatory. I cannot believe reading a book in the year of our Lord 2022 as a queer person, reading some really gross, predatory stereotypes of queer people. It wasn't fun. It was not fun. And this book is lauded. This book is lauded as a classic of the genre. And it just made me so sad. It was so sad. Also, can we talk about the sexism in this book? It's there, but it's also not there. I am so confused. I think it's really easy as a modern reader to ding the homophobia, the cultural appropriation, the sexism, right? The honestly, like the white savior narrative that is really present here, didn't like it. All of those things could have been taken out of this book for me, and I would have found it more enjoyable. I would have given it a higher star rating. But for me, fundamentally, the thing that I cannot get about this book is how much it tells, not shows. What if Paul had a vision and it didn't come true? That would have been narratively interesting, but that can't happen because Frank Herbert is writing an allegory about Jesus Christ and Moses. Anyway, but he's writing this allegory, right? And he has to shove it down your throat so hard. And Paul has to be perfect all the time because then he's not a Christ-like figure, guys. I think if there had been tension and suspense in this book, it would have been better. I think if just our main character didn't constantly act like a robot, this would have been better. He has some moments where, you know, he gets really upset about a vision or like, you know, something happens, but all of his processing happens internally. And then Jessica is always there going, oh, he's processing all of this internally. I'll leave him alone so that he can have his moment of humanity before he becomes my robot son again. I will probably sit down and watch the next movie. I can commit to that. I can commit to 2.5 hours of that, but like, I cannot pick up the next book and read it. For all of you who love this book, who were really excited for me to read it because you're like, oh, I can't wait for her to love it. I'm so sorry. I'm not trying to be mean. I'm not trying to poo-poo over your book. I'm really not. And hey, if Dune is your favorite book, tell me why you love this book, please. As much as I'm complaining over the things that I disliked about this book, I am genuinely glad that I read this book. I feel like this is just one of those books that if you are a genre reader, you have to read this book. It's like reading The Fellowship of the Rings, right? By Tolkien. You have to read it. If you're a fantasy reader, you got to read it just so that you understand where the genre of fantasy has come from. You've got to read it. And I am starting to really get into sci-fi because of my TBR game. I have 2 sci-fi books that I read in the month of January that I loved. So I'm a sci-fi reader now, and I'm really glad that I picked this up. I'm glad that I invested the time in reading this book. If my partner tries to get me to read the second one, I'm going to tell him to take a long walk off a short bridge. You know what I mean? That's Dune by Frank Herbert. Again, if you love this book, I love you. I love you. You're great. I don't think this book is great, but I think you're great. And that's all that matters, right? We're done. Now that we've gotten Dune out of the way, let's talk about some of the other books that I read for my TBR challenges. So like I said, I read Dune because I pulled a TBR card. I had to read a book that was chosen by my partner. The next book that I read because the prompt was read a fantasy novel. So I picked up the second volume of Beastars. I think everyone kind of has a sense of what this is about. It's on its second season in the Netflix series, but just really briefly, imagine if Zootopia was R-rated. That's what Beastars is. It's this world where animals are anthropomorphized as people. There are no humans in this world. It's just animals. The carnivores and the herbivores live in this kind of uneasy tension and peace. It's about a wolf named Legoshi, and he's just trying to live his life, man. He falls in love with a rabbit. He becomes best friends with a deer. There's a lot of stuff that happens. The second volume in particular surrounds the school play that the drama club puts on, that Legoshi is a part of, Louis is a part of. I gave this 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. I really loved the artwork. I love the grittiness of it. I love how adult it is. The next 2 books that I read instead of the 2 mystery thriller novels that I chose for January. I believe the 2 novels that I chose originally were Winter House and Scritch Scratch. The first book that I picked up was the Decagon House Murders. And this is a classic Japanese novel. I read a part of the foreword, and apparently this book revolutionized the locked room mystery in Japan. I actually unintentionally read 2 genre classics in the month of January. I thought Dune was the only one I was going to pick up, but I picked up the Decagon House Murders. Really enjoyed it. It was not a 5-star read. It was a 4-star read, so it's not a new favorite, but I really enjoyed it. I completely understand why people are enamored with Agatha Christie, and this book was genuinely a love letter to And Then There Were None. I read And Then There Were None last year in 2021. I really loved it. I listened to it on audiobook. It was a great time. Once we reached the part of the novel where the author laid out how the murderer carried out all of the murders and why they did it, what their motivation was, it was really interesting. It was really well done. I really enjoyed the care that the author put into this novel. If you read mystery thrillers all the time, I'm sure you know what the Decagon House Murders are. I'm sure I don't have to tell you. But if you're getting into the genre just like me, I would really recommend it. I think it's one of those books like Dune, like Lord of the Rings. If you're going to get into the genre, it's good to start with a classic to kind of ground yourself so that you can see how later authors and later books build on the genre. The other mystery thriller book I read was 9 Perfect Strangers by Moriarty. I also watched the Hulu adaptation of this. I think I like the book a lot better, but I will watch anything that has Melissa McCarthy in it, so I'm fine. 9 Perfect Strangers is about these people who go to a wellness retreat. Everybody goes to the retreat for different reasons, and each chapter is from a different perspective, from a different character. So you really get into everybody's minds, you get into why they're there, what they're worried about, what they're scared about. I actually listened to this book on audio, and it's not the best audiobook I've ever listened to, but I really enjoyed it. It was good. The author did a really nice Russian accent for Masha, so I really appreciated that. I liked that the book didn't just end with the end of the retreat. It kept going for a couple chapters, and you saw how everyone took away certain things from the retreat and implemented it in their daily lives and made some real changes and grew as characters. It was really cool. This was also a 4-star read for me. It was not a 5-star. It wasn't the best thing I've ever read, but it was really great. And I would really recommend the book. I would recommend the audiobook, and I would recommend the adaptation too. The adaptation on Hulu, it gets kind of different. It takes some different twists and turns than the book does, but I really enjoyed it. I thought all of the actors did a great job. Now let's get on to my 5-star reads. Save the best for last. My other TB card prompt was read a book by a queer author. So I read The Tea Dragon Tapestry by Kay O'Neill. 5-star. Is it shocking that I loved this book? No, it is not. This book was such a great conclusion to the series. The theme of grief and moving on and starting over and looking at endings as beginnings, all of those things were so beautiful and they were so well done. It's really shocking to me sometimes how much of an impact such short, to the point stories can have, especially when in the hands of such a talented storyteller like Kay O'Neill. It's truly incredible that this book was so short, that it didn't have a lot of words in it. It was mostly illustrations, but I was crying at the end of it. I think I was. This book was so good. It was I don't know what else to say. The artwork was beautiful. I love the color palette. The colors are so rich and vibrant and so warm and comfy. This whole book series really just makes you want to drink tea and sit in a little nook with your favorite blanket and eat some yummy food. I mean, if Hygge was a book series, it would be The Tea Dragon Society by Kay O'Neill. So great. Love it. 5 stars. Can't recommend it enough. The next book that I read that fulfilled my science fiction prompt was Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Neuvel. I also read the sequel. I listened to both of these books on audiobook. Incredible. It's hard to say that these books are the greatest audiobooks I've ever listened to, because obviously Jim Dale's narration of the Harry Potter series exists, and like, oh my gosh, that is just a masterpiece. So Sleeping Giants is a collection of interviews, personal journal entries, mission logs. When I think of really great stories, I don't think of an interview, right? I don't think of a journal entry. I don't think of a mission log. Those are very passive storytelling elements, right? Maybe those are flavors that happen within a book or something, but it doesn't comprise the whole book. The author of these books takes that premise and goes, nope, and just says, I'm just going to tell a really engaging, active, beautiful, emotional story using some of the most indirect storytelling methods that I can. It's truly incredible. I cannot believe that these books exist. I do not want to give a lot of the plot away, because I think with these books, the less you know, the better, to be quite honest. Each book follows the same characters, their progression. It follows the world that Sylvain Neuvel somehow expertly creates in the first one. Guys, I just can't get over how good these books are. You have to listen to them, and you have to listen to them. I highly recommend the audiobook. You have to listen to the audiobook. You are doing yourself a great disservice if you read a physical print copy of these stories, okay? You have to read the audiobook. Promise me now. Thank you. This story starts with the head scientist on this research project, right? And she becomes the head scientist because she falls into a pit when she's a little girl, when she's riding her bicycle, and she falls into this giant metal hand. And it is obvious to everyone, to the United States government, that the hand and the pit that she falls in are not from this earth. They are alien in origin. And so when she becomes an adult, she gets on the research team, she helps figure out what's going on, and then there are different characters that come on the research team, and they become the main characters of the story. They all fill different roles in different ways. They all have different skills. There's a lot of really strong competing personalities. It's very fun. It is such a fun book. I cried multiple times. I cried multiple times. There were so many twists and turns. Honestly, I was taken off guard so many times in these books. I felt like I was reading a mystery thriller. It was incredible. I cannot recommend these books enough. If you love yourself like you should, love yourself enough, rent this from your library, buy it on Audible or wherever you buy audiobooks. I don't know where people buy audiobooks. I only get them from my library. I am so excited to listen to the last one, but I'm saving it. I'm trying to be good because I want to gobble it up the next time I get a science fiction recommendation from my TBR game. So guys, I love it. You gotta read it. 5 stars to both Sleeping Giants and Waking Gods. So good. I am so happy that I got a science fiction prompt. I'm a sci-fi reader now, okay? This is me, Katie, sci-fi reader. Yeah. The next 5-star book I read was a picture book. It's called We Don't Eat Our Classmates by Ryan Higgins. This book was so adorable. It was so funny. The artwork was so beautiful and interesting. I loved it. This book is about a T-Rex named Penelope. She loves ponies. And why does she love ponies? Because they're her favorite thing to eat. Penelope is very sweet, but she can't stop eating her classmates because they're so delicious, because again, she's a T-Rex. She has a confrontation at the end of the book that lets her know that eating people is probably not a good idea. I loved this book. My child loved this book. Just a quick clarification, when I give star ratings for picture books, I'm not just taking my enjoyment or my opinion of the book into consideration. I'm also taking in my child's enjoyment of the book as well, because obviously I'm not the only one who's reading the book. My child is also there. My child is also giving feedback. And so I try to incorporate their opinion in my star rating as well. So we both loved this book. This was a 5-star read for both me and my child. Another 5-star picture book is going to be La Princesa and the Pea. I picked this up for my child at our Scholastic Book Fair, and I love it. I love it. It is so fun. The artwork is so beautiful. I mean, just look at that. Just look at that artwork. It's so beautiful. And as you can see, it's a bilingual book. So there are Spanish words sprinkled throughout the English text. There is a glossary at the end that tells you what all of the words mean. It's so adorable. This is such a beautiful retelling of The Princess and the Pea. I love the Spanish setting. I love the bilingual nature of the book. The artwork is incredible. I think this is my favorite retelling of The Princess of the Pea. If you're trying to expose your child to different languages, this is a great way to do that. I highly recommend. 5 stars. Another 5-star picture book I have is Fred Gets Dressed by Brown. This is about a little boy named Fred, and he is naked, and he realizes that he has to get dressed. So he goes into mommy and daddy's room, and he goes into their closet, and he starts to put on daddy's clothes, and they just don't fit him. He doesn't feel comfortable in them. He doesn't like them. So he puts on mommy's clothes, and he loves them, and he feels great, and he's strutting around, and then mommy and daddy come in, and there's this really beautiful full page of Fred on one end and mommy and daddy on the other end, and they're just kind of staring at each other, and you as the adult reader are holding your breath because you're scared that Fred is going to get chastised or punished for getting dressed in his mom's clothes. But that is not what happens. Mommy and daddy are very excited to play dress up with Fred, and they all put on makeup, and they put on mommy's jewelry, and they put on mommy's accessories, and it's just a great time. It is such a sweet book. I'm gonna give 5 stars to Fred Gets Dressed. It's really cute. It's a great read. Another 5-star picture book that I have for you is The Catman of Aleppo. The Catman of Aleppo is about a man from Aleppo, and he stays behind during the Syrian war. The main character becomes an ambulance driver. He really steps up for his community in a really big way. That in itself is heroic and a great thing to show children, but he also has a lot of compassion for the homeless cat population of Aleppo, because people are obviously fleeing because of a war and they can't bring their cats with them, so they just leave them behind. So he builds and creates a cat sanctuary, and when people are fleeing Aleppo because of the war, they know that they can go and they can drop off their cat with the cat man of Aleppo, and he will protect them and keep them safe. This was just a really beautiful story about a person who is just a normal person who is doing wonderful, heroic things in their local community. This was a joy to read with my child. I loved it so much. 5 stars all the way. The last book that I want to talk about, it's our last 5-star picture book. Let me tell you about This Is Not My Hat by Klassen. This is a part of a series called the Hat series. This book was cracking my child up the entire time we were reading it. The artwork is so funny. The different facial expressions that the author puts on all of the animals that are in this book, it's hilarious. I had a great time reading this book. I think we actually read this book twice in a row because we loved it so much. If you're having a bad day and you just need a little like spark of joy, you just need a little pick-me-up, read This Is Not My Hat. It will make you smile. It'll make you laugh. This book is incredible. That's all I have to say about that. All right, y'all. So that's all I have to say about what I read in January. Obviously, I read a ton more things that I didn't get into, but I hope that my little images were helpful. I hope that you pick up some of the books that I recommended, especially the 5-star reads. You gotta try them. You gotta try them. For all of my Dune lovers out there, much love. Much love to you guys. Again, please tell me in the comments why you love Dune, maybe why you disliked Dune, and let me know any of the other books that I mentioned. Did you read them? Did you love them? Did you not? Let me know. I would love to hear about it. Have a great day. Bye.